The Attitude Era is usually referred to as the pinnacle of the sports entertainment industry. From a money standpoint, that's unequivocal. From a creative standpoint, you can probably make an argument for something else, but you'd have to explain how it compares as the measuring stick. One thing that you really can't argue, though, is what the biggest rivalry between two all-time greats was, as there was never an enduring multi-year feud that could stand up to two best of the Attitude Era throwing down. Hell, there's a valid argument that maybe The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin are the two biggest wrestling superstars of all time. They were the two biggest reasons that from 97 through about 2003, WWF was not only the dominant force in wrestling, but in all of entertainment, with Raw routinely being the highest rated show on cable TV in the world. In story, it always seemed like Austin versus Vince was the biggest feud of the era, but when you really think about rivalries, I would argue that nothing ever topped The Rock and Austin, the two Greek gods of wrestling that were clearly in a pantheon all their own, even on a loaded roster of future Hall of Famers. You knew that these guys loved the product and had pro wrestling in their veins, the third generation heir apparent future movie star, and the redneck Texas rattlesnake that every fan thought they could be. They brought out the best in each other, rarely disappointing when they were on screen together, and the fans would have been fine with them main eventing WrestleMania year after year until the end of time. As it was, they had to settle for a WrestleMania trilogy, although I think a few are going to be disappointed with what they got since it was so very good. Their WrestleMania narrative started with 14, where even though they faced other wrestlers, Austin was first coronated with the world title, and The Rock had his coming out party and was treated like a big star that was going to be the next big thing, the next great heel that would build up for to be a foil for everyman Austin. That played out perfectly, culminating in 15, where they shared the Mania stage for the first time. On the other end of the timeline, there was only one way Austin's career could end, only one match worthy of being his last, and that was again against The Rock at WrestleMania 19. Not the main event simply because they would never have it. They didn't need the main event or the title to make that the match everyone wanted to see. But the match we're talking about today is their finest. It was for the title, and it was in the main event as the middle match in their WrestleMania trilogy. It is the absolute pinnacle of the Attitude Era. Houston, 2001, it's WrestleMania 17.
Let's get ready to rumble! Yeah! It doesn't matter! To be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo, right here.
You will rest in peace.
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
Welcome to The Best There Ever Was, where we talk about the art form that is professional wrestling and the emotional connection that keeps us fans coming back to it. I'm Chris.
I'm Fax.
And we are the Curtain Jerks. And this season on The Best There Ever Was, we're discussing the greatest rivalries in professional wrestling history. This episode will be discussing Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Stone Cold. Not the Ringmaster, not Stunning.
Stone Cold.
Stone Cold.
Steve Austin and The Rock, and their match at WrestleMania 17 or X-Seven.
Yeah, I was about to apologize that in the intro I said 17 instead of X-Seven, which is the proper canonical name.
Yeah. Fax and I had I will tell you, we had a great time at ROH show recently. If you want to take a look at the pictures of our night, you can find those on Instagram. We had a good time.
I think it was a pretty good demonstration on what the Curtain Jerks do at Ring of Honor shows and other wrestling music. Pretty much any excuse to drink.
We enjoyed an excellent cocktail called the Pile Driver, which of course is a dark and stormy, just without lime, so
and cheaper alcohol,
much cheaper alcohol.
Yeah, and it makes your head feel like you've received a few pile drivers the next day.
I honestly feel pretty good, man.
I'm all right. I'm all right.
Joining us today, though, to discuss The Rock and Steve Austin is our friend Beth Casey.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to be here. And I gotta say, it's fine that you said 17, because in my head I was like, oh, that's 17. And then I saw this thing on YouTube and it was like this huge debate between whether people call it X-Seven or 17. Well, you're not the only one.
Well, I think at the time you had to call it X-Seven, but now it feels weird to go back because I think it was X-Seven and X-Eight, right? I think that those they both shared that. Where now it's like, well, Austin was in WrestleMania 14, 15, 16. He wasn't in 16. X-Seven, X-Eight, and then 19. It's like, what?
Well, that's the thing is that it almost feels like, did someone just not know how to write 17 and 18 in Roman numerals? Because they just kept going in chronological order with Roman numerals.
Well, I will admit, with like the Super Bowl, when they started getting into the 40s, it started getting real hard.
True.
Real hard. And at a certain point, no one really cares what the number is. And like, I don't even know why we still number them. Like, why isn't it's just WrestleMania?
For reference, I'm sure. Just to be able to be like, oh, you remember that one.
I think that's basically what they do now, though, in terms of the marketing. It just says WrestleMania and then some logo. But again, because you want to try to remember them, right? Like WrestleMania 2000 is problematic because you're like, no, it's 16. You have to remember that it's,
I think when there was less of them, then the number made more sense. But like when we get to like look at UFC, where it's like you remember UFC 174? Like I definitely remember 173. I missed 172. You're gonna have to refresh me on 174.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Beth, talks about your journey as a wrestling fan. What got you into it? What keeps coming back to
Oh
it?
my goodness. Well, I've said it before, but I think what drew me into wrestling, I was a kid, and it was really like oh my God. But it was really like the first narrative I was interested in following. I think it was the first thing on TV that wasn't a cartoon, and it just seemed so badass to me and so intense, and it was just something that I probably knew I wasn't allowed to watch.
So did you start with like the weekend or like 10 a.m. shows, like those kind of things, or?
I was Monday nights were my favorite. Okay. Monday nights, Raw. And then I think SmackDown kept switching from Wednesday to Thursdays, but I was like a religious watcher for a long time. And it was, I think it was just the whole fantasy of it. Like it was just so extravagant and crazy, and like it was one of those things too. My parents would be like, well, Beth, that's fake. But I looked at it and I was like, there's no way. There's no way.
The Rock is really doing that with his eyebrow. That's not fake.
That's 100% real.
Yeah.
But even still, I look at it and I'm still just amazed with the athleticism. And I do complain about, like, I wish the stories were just as intense and crazy as they were when I was growing up. But it's still just so phenomenal, the things that these people can put their bodies through and still make it, entertaining and interesting and keep doing it every week. So.
Well, I do think it's also hard to match the stories from when you're a kid because it's the first time you're seeing them, and wrestling relies, so much on tropes, right? That once you've seen it, you're like, that just reminds me of that thing before. But the first time you're seeing it, it reminds you of nothing else, and you're like, this is just amazing.
Yeah, it's a fun time. It's still fun.
And if you think about it with wrestling, like we can put all these accoutrements and these different bells and whistles on it, but there's really just like it's really like the same like 10 stories that they keep going back to. And on a base level, they make sense to a child, right? There's a reason that wrestling can appeal to kids, but there's ways that you can take it and just like the match we're going to talk about today, like it's a very simple story, right? That anyone can understand, a child can understand, but there's a lot of meat in there and depth for somebody that, wants to go a little deeper on it. And I think that's one of the beauties of wrestling is that you can make someone, they went over the top with some of the rated R superstar stuff there for a little while.
Oh my God, remember when Edge had sex in the ring?
Yeah, and Eric Bischoff was talking about hot lesbian action, and it was just
Christ.
like, I wouldn't let a kid watch that, but it was just unnecessary in so many different. Mae Young gave birth to a hand. Like,
well, she had to give birth to something.
Listen,
for promising
again,
something.
like I was like, a 18, 19 or whatever during that era, so like I loved it, but. I kind of like now that, again, it's the simple story that you should be able to get a good cross-section of everybody. Should be able to, enjoy it. I think it's the same way like superhero movies or Star Wars, right? Like there's that little kid version and they see it on that level and it's fine. But if you want to put more into it, you'll get more out of it.
You no longer want to like cover the eyes of the child who's sitting next to you at the show. Like, no, you probably shouldn't be seeing that.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Unless New Jack's on that show. Because then... Even 2018, you gotta cover your kid's eyes if New Jack comes out at an indie show.
But yeah, we'll talk about that and more in the undercard.
Ding ding ding.
Oh, this is about the ding ding ding. Oh, man. There you go.
There it is.
I missed you, ding ding ding.
So The Rock and Steve Austin Interestingly, that their paths crossed many times, but they kind of took breaks from each other, which I think is sort of an interesting thing in the way their rivalry developed. They kind of first crossed paths when Austin's really sort of becoming a big deal in 1997. He just won the Intercontinental title again, and he's clearly at this point the biggest star in the company now that Bret Hart has left.
And the Rock, or Rocky Maivia, or I guess he was the Rock by that point. He wasn't Rocky Maivia, but he was still just beginning he wasn't quite like, again, that's why I always go back to WrestleMania 14, at least for me. He gave that interview in his quote-unquote palatial palace, and then he had I think it was the Shamrock match.
Yes.
Where he holds up the title from the stretcher. To me, that was like the first moment where you're like, okay, this is the next big thing. Like, Austin's definitely the thing. This guy is going to be the next big thing. And I think what the era you're talking about, which was before that, is very much Austin's the biggest star, but he hasn't been formally coronated. You know, back when WWE, there'd be stars before they were coronated with WrestleMania main event.
And they only need to do it, coronate someone once as opposed to 6 times.
Well, I think they crossed paths when they both needed it, I feel like. Because the first few times I saw The Rock and Steve Austin interact, The Rock was still in the Nation of Domination. And I almost, like, that part of that feud didn't even register with me when I was thinking back on it, because I've always just imagined The Rock as The Rock. So it was kind of...
Well, it's with the Nation's kind of where he started becoming The Rock, right?
Right,
you know?
right.
But he started as just any other member of the Nation. Yeah.
Sure. I remember this one moment where it was right after Steve Austin had gotten the title and the Nation, I think it was the Intercontinental title that he had just gotten. Maybe I'm mixing up my titles, but the Nation came out and Farouk says something to Steve Austin. He goes, "I'm going to be honest, I didn't understand a damn word you just said." And then like a young, scrappy Rock just runs down to the ring and gets Stone Cold Stunnered immediately. And that was like, to me, that was just the start of like this really interesting rise of both of them. Because The Rock in that moment just seemed so like, well, I'm gonna go get him first, and it was like Steve Austin demonstrating some sort of like dominance and superiority. And then from there, it just like built. And as soon as The Rock wasn't, part of just the Nation, it was just like this, I don't know. I just loved how independent and powerful they both were.
Well, and that's really like was the first making of The Rock, right? Because when he was Rocky Maivia, sorry. Rocky Johnson was his dad. Rocky Maivia, and he won a world Intercontinental title, which was like, no one really cared about it.
Well, he doesn't even win. So he wins the Intercontinental title, but then Austin ends up handing him the belt.
Yeah.
In that 97 feud.
That's what we're saying. In the 97 feud is where he's like a legitimate IC title guy, right? Like even before that, he's not even an IC title guy, really. Not legitimately. Right. He was technically an IC level guy because he was getting he was the Roman Reigns of his day. Like he was getting pushed down people's throats, and it failed horribly. And then when he went heel, he joined the Nation, and with the feud with Austin at that IC level, that's really what made him as an IC level guy. And then the beautiful thing is, well, Austin actually never had to make The Rock as a world title guy because The Rock really took it himself from there, right? And Mick Foley obviously helped a lot, and there was a lot of people that helped along the way. His big feud with Triple H that really elevated both guys. They had that ladder match at SummerSlam that really elevated both guys. That again, it was still IC title level, but it kind of felt like both guys were potentially ready to take that next step to the Undertaker Austin, world title picture level.
Yeah, but you can see sort of in that first rivalry the beginning of the seeds of things where Rock's kind of the funny guy. There's a great line where Vince is talking about maybe firing The Rock, and Rock thinks you should fire him. Just like just sort of slips in. But there's also, I think, so interesting is that the structure of the matches they have, even that first match, which is it's In Your House, D-Generation X in 97.
I think that was the same weekend as UFC 112. Yeah.
Yes, of course. The match, the structure they have in that match ends up being somewhat similar to the structure they would have in all the WrestleMania matches, where it kind of starts really fast and it's kind of a lot of it goes on outside. There's some big bumps, although most of the big bumps get taken by D'Lo Brown in that match. Yeah. It goes through a truck. I was sitting there watching the match with my wife, and she was like, "Man, that's such a waste of a truck. Why'd you?"
Stone Cold would go on to do a lot more things with a lot more
Oh
hardware.
yeah, God, I loved when he drove the Coors Light truck into the ring and then just like sprays the McMahons and The Rock with beer.
Yeah, Vince is doing the swimming thing.
Yeah.
Other thing from like the early days with The Rock and Steve, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm sorry, Mr. Austin. I hated using that casual tone with him. Is the fluidity of The Rock taking a Stone Cold Stunner, where it's always a little awkward in the earlier years, and then like as it goes on, he just gets better and better and better at selling and taking that stunner. And Beth, do you have a favorite stunner that The Rock took? Or can you think of anyone that you would rather see take a Stone Cold Stunner than The Rock?
I just imagine I think early on, The Rock just kind of flopped like everyone else did. But he started getting to the point where he would like backspin. Do you know what I mean? It was like he would like almost do a handstand after like it was that.
I think sometimes he literally did, right? Like he would like flip backwards and that like it was just so animated. But it was so goofy and cartoony and over the top, but yet it still actually made the move. Like it made you smile, but it also still sold the finisher as a killer, right?
And I think him and Steve Austin were so good at doing that. I mean, I loved watching them against each other because they both have this same like brawler kind of style at times. And Steve Austin is so animated whenever he gets like thrown into something or like, I mean, he just kind of bounces around. I like doing that motion, like people can see me. But I think him and The Rock play off of each other so well. They just sell getting hit so well.
Well, and I think at that point in like, even when we start getting to the WrestleMania 15, the match we're talking about today, through, that like 5-year period where they're undoubtedly 1A and 1B in some order. And, they're wrestling each other. And that really adapted the Attitude Era main event style. Those two were both really good at. Triple H and Mankind, again, really good at it as well, where a lot of it was because of Austin's physical limitations, that there was this brawling style. And at that point in time, even by like WrestleMania 15, when he's one of the top guys, The Rock still isn't a great in-ring guy, but he's great at brawling and he's great at that over-the-top selling. And of course, as you mentioned, Austin's always been great at that stuff. And his body could still do that even after all of his injuries, because that was always the sad thing with Stone Cold, is by the time he was coronated, his body was already kind of failing him. And then The Rock, took a long time to learn it, but their styles just meshed perfectly together, even though neither one of them, like the match we're talking about today in 17, neither one of them is at their physical, in-ring prime, I would say.
Yeah.
Steve's already well on his decline. The Rock's not quite fully there yet, although he might be maybe by X-Seven. But
I think he's getting there, and it's interesting though seeing The Rock sort of enter his prime over the course of this, right? Because you watch WrestleMania 15, and The Rock is sort of just shy of being where he's going to be. He's still definitely a step below Austin in that match.
Well, and all of his great matches until then were against Mick Foley, and they were really Mick Foley matches. It was Mick Foley takes that ass whooping matches, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of an interesting thing, but once you go from 15, where it's a good match, but
it's a fine match,
you know going in, Austin's winning this, right? There's no way they're walking out of WrestleMania without Austin being the champion.
Right.
That when they get to WrestleMania X-Seven 2 years later, things have changed so much that Austin's had to take a long break because of a neck injury, and The Rock has become like the fucking Rock. And that point, it's kind of the most awesome kind of WrestleMania main event where you have two guys who are both popular, who you're like, I actually don't know who's going to win this match. It's not clear. Either one of them could walk out and it would be a reasonable answer.
Yeah, I mean, they were just on a completely different level. And, this is one of the rare episodes, like, I just want to get in and talk about this match because there's so much meat on this bone.
No, it's hard to like hold back.
Yeah, it's hard to hold back. Like the whole setup, and Houston is just great. Like they should have every WrestleMania at the. I don't know if the Astrodome still exists, but if not, they should rebuild it, and they should have every major wrestling show there because that crowd is amazing. Like you don't get at WrestleManias anymore, where I get why they do these big football stadiums, but particularly if they're the big football stadiums that are open air and not a dome, it's just like you're not going to see this era. You're not going to see a WrestleMania with these huge. Like even if you watch that entire card, literally every match on that card. Well, all right, I think I'm stepping on some other. So much meat on the bone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting though because obviously we'll talk about the big match in the middle where they're sort of both the top. It's kind of interesting to see that sort of then that decline match WrestleMania 19, when they've decided to go back to the Roman numerals, XIX.
Yeah.
That, because at that point they're trying to turn The Rock heel. Rock's already, a movie star. Austin, that's going to be his last match, he realizes, because he's totally physically destroyed at that point.
Sure. And
at that point, you can see them kind of drifting away. It's clearly, very clearly, sort of a coda.
Right.
In part because The Rock, we already know The Rock's going to go on to something else, and Austin's going to figure out what he's going to do. But he's not where he was, and even still, that's basically the main event of that show. I mean, Lesnar and Angle follows them, but they're basically the real main event.
And I really do feel like that was one of those ones where, and I don't know this, I'm sure they've talked about it on podcasts or something before, but I'm guessing Austin probably said, like, I don't want to go on last. Like, I want this Lesnar kid to go on last. Even though, he famously kind of had some issues with Lesnar. I think that, like, he was always a, go out on your back guy. He's always a very traditional guy. And I think he was just like, come on, you can't put my last match last. That's just, then you're just left with nothing to move into the next year with.
Right. Well, I also think, like, I listened to Stone Cold on a podcast recently, and I think at the time that he left, he just knew it was his time to go. And I don't think that he had that, like, I have to be the main event guy. I think he was just kind of going to respectfully bow out. And I think he'd had some issues with the WWE and Vince McMahon that he was just like, you know what? I don't want to make a big deal out of this. Even if he did want to be the main event, I feel like that wouldn't even be a battle he'd want to.
Well, but his issues weren't that he wanted to be the main event. And I get, and Austin, because he has his own podcast and stuff, like, he's probably talked about it more, and I've certainly heard more of it than the other side. But it always seemed like his issue wasn't even that to lose to Brock Lesnar and to put over the young talent. It's just he wanted to make more money out of it. He wanted to make it this bigger thing where they were just like, let's just do this one-shot deal. You're going to just lose to Lesnar and that's it. Where he's like, no, let's stretch this out. Let's make it a program. Let's make some money off it. Let's give him the chase and then the big win. And they didn't want to do that. And that's where I think he's just like, screw it, fine, whatever. I want to go against The Rock. That's how I want to end the career. Like, and I don't know if it was generally known that was his last match because I wasn't actively in it.
I don't think they knew, yeah.
But he definitely knew. He definitely knew going in, and Vince, I think, definitely knew going in, and I assume The Rock definitely knew going in. But yeah, they couldn't quite recreate the magic of 17 though, because that's, again, just so perfect.
But I do think it's interesting though that I feel like that match, the last one, is sort of the beginning of the structure of how WrestleManias got built in the future, which is that, Rock at that point hadn't been around since SummerSlam after he lost to Lesnar. Austin hadn't been around for a while. And it's the beginning of, well, it's a month away from WrestleMania. Time for two big stars to come back and have a match, as opposed to something that was being built organically out of the stories. But it worked for those guys because they were getting out of the business at a young enough age that you're like, well, we can still use them. If they want to come back once a year, why wouldn't we use them at WrestleMania?
Well, and I personally have no problem with that even today, right? Like, if they're big stars and we want to see them wrestle, cool. Like, I was very down on seeing Goldberg and Lesnar. Like, I signed up for that one. I was totally okay with that. So my bigger problem now is for these WrestleManias is that there's room for both, right? It's like a 32-hour show. Even if you kept it to 3 hours plus an hour pre-show, even in 4 hours, there's more than enough time to have, say, 2 part-timer matches with Lesnar and somebody else maybe, and you can still build like a big, nice world title match, where like I always look at like Jericho and Owens, where it really felt like that was building up to be the big marquee program at WrestleMania. And then, of course, you knew you were going to get the other guys, you were going to get Goldberg, you're going to get Lesnar and stuff like that. But they were building that up, and then it just feels like they just screwed the pooch on it, right? Leading up to it, they took all the momentum off it. And yeah, I think that match did happen at WrestleMania, right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, but it was just
bummed
like
when Jericho lost.
And I was bummed with it, but it was just like I was at the Royal Rumble too, and I remember I think Jericho was second to last or third to last in, and everyone knew he wasn't going to win, but it was just like, oh my God, just have Jericho win it and then turn on Owens. And they screwed that up so badly. And that's not Brock Lesnar's fault. That's not Bill Goldberg's fault, right? That's creative's fault.
Right.
Yeah. So I will say, before we get to the main event, we will talk about one of our segments, overrated and underrated. Now, obviously, after that match, as you said, The Rock went off to make movies. So did Steve Austin. So
he is a Hollywood blonde.
He was a Hollywood blonde. Yes. No, not by that point. But
by that point, he's a Hollywood bald.
So we'll talk about favorite overrated and underrated Rock and Steve Austin movies. Beth, do you have any?
You know, I feel like The Rock is in so much stuff now. I'm kind of tired of seeing The Rock in everything. That's not to say he hasn't done good stuff. I think my own favorite is Moana. I like when he doesn't take himself so seriously. It's hard for me to watch him in action movies. It's the same with Stone Cold. Like Stone Cold was never like taken too seriously in wrestling. So for him to be like an action hero, I was like, I don't really like. I want him to be the Texas Rattlesnake. Like so him in The Longest Yard. Okay, great. Like that's like a kind of funny movie, and he's not being too serious. He's still kind of Stone Cold. I can get behind that, and I know. I also understand. Like I'm sure they don't want to be those wrestlers forever. So I try to give them the benefit of the doubt of like, okay, I'll like watch this and see.
Not everyone can be the Miz and just be a great action star that's just reeling off huge movie after huge movie. Yeah.
Right. Not everyone can be the Miz, but I don't know. I feel like I should give them more of a chance.
Do you like now that we've hit the point where like The Rock is such a big star though that like we as wrestling fans don't feel obligated to go see his movies because like they'll do fine without us? Is that
Yes, it's a nice weight off my chest.
you didn't see Baywatch opening weekend?
I did not see Baywatch. No,
Well, it's
I
very
had no
important 'cause
interest.
that's definitely the reason I saw the Scorpion King or whatever was
Well,
just to
I
see
was
the
gonna say-
Rock.
Well, yeah, that's why everyone saw Scorpion.
But I think that's definitely my underrated for The Rock is that it's not a very good movie. Like I think most of us that watched it, the wrestling fans, you either watch it because you love the Mummy franchise or you watch it because you love The Rock. Those are the only two people that saw that movie. But especially if you rewatch it now, it's just not very good. It's like a really bad Conan ripoff, and it's really the rundown is excellent. It's superb, and I think that's where you get to that. You could call the rundown an action movie if you wanted to, but it was very much like that buddy comedy action movie with Stifler, right? I think was the other guy.
I think so. Yeah.
I think it was him and Stifler.
Wasn't Christopher Walken in that too?
Yeah, he was the bad guy. Arnold makes a little cameo, and that movie is so good. And that's where I think like I like The Rock, even in like a big blockbustery movie, if he can play that like funny, charismatic, but still kind of big dangerous guy.
I do recall enjoying the rundown, particularly some of the Christopher Walken stuff was super funny.
That movie's so good.
But no
just
one
love
else was.
Christopher
I remember seeing in the theater, no one else like laughing at the Christopher Walken stuff. Like I'm like rolling on the floor, and everyone else is like.
It's Christopher Walken.
That movie has something for everyone. There's romance, there's action, there's comedy, everything.
I was on the comedy side, underrated. I really like The Game Plan. I think I
You're the one.
I won that. I'm the one guy. I think I won the DVD in a contest for free or something, and I watched it, and I was like,
What kind of contests are you entering?
You probably liked it
because
because it was free.
that's fairly. But again, no one else saw it, so I think it's still underrated. I'm not telling you it's a classic. I think I remember this. I think it was a contest in which I had to identify WWF wrestlers based on like old trading card pictures.
that was your mom holding the contest. This sounds like it's tailored directly to you, like a vehicle for you to go over.
It was some sports blog or something. I don't recall
they had
the
great
details.
prizes on that.
But I will say, for those who've forgotten the game plan, The Rock stars as bachelor football star Joe Kingman. He's wealthy and carefree, and his team is on the way to capturing a championship, but he's tackled by some unexpected news. He has a young daughter, the result of a last fling with his ex-wife, and he has to learn to balance the personal and professional lives with the needs of a child.
I remember this one now.
Yeah.
Man, that's your underrated one? That's the one you like the most?
I'm not saying I like it the most. I'm just saying it's underrated. I think we've all forgotten it. We
That's
could all
true.
watch it and have a good time.
And again, The Rock has had so many movies that The Rock, so like Be Cool, I really liked him in because that was his first like non-action movie at all. It's a kind of a smaller supporting role, and he's really great in it. Walking Tall, I have a super soft spot for. I remember just watching that over Miller Lights in college several times. But the one I'm going to say is, I'm going to preface by saying this is a horrendous movie, but Doom, based on like the old computer game, the movie terrible.
I mean, it was a
The
good
Rock's
computer game.
performance the game great. The movie terrible. The Rock's performance in it forgettable. But you should just see, you can probably find on YouTube, the end of that movie, just what they do, like they turn it into a video game in the movie is actually really, really cool. Like the last 10 minutes is awesome. The first hour and a half, there's nothing you need to know. Just skip to the end, and it's really cool.
No one wants to stump for an Austin movie?
Well,
No.
I mean, she said the Longest Yard, right?
Longest
Kinda,
Yard,
yeah.
kind of. I mean, I just don't like to see him as an action hero is all. And he's really only done action movies. I think the last thing he did was...
If you look up Steve Austin on Netflix, there is a lot of movies there that you've never heard of. And he's the star of them. He's on the box. But yeah, like Longest Yard, I think he was good. Expendables, the first one. The movie is fairly rated.
That is a good point.
But his performance in it, I think, is underrated because I think he gets overshadowed. Because I knew he was going to be in that movie. But again, there's so many people in that movie that I just thought since his name was like 15th on the list, he was going to have a very small part. And his part's not that small. And he plays kind of the second in command bad guy. And he's really good to the point that at the end of it, I'm like, that was Steve Austin, right? Like that was Stone Cold Steve. It wasn't just like a guy that looks like him.
Yeah.
That was the actual Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, he was in a lot of, I looked at his IMDb page today, and he was in a lot of like small roles as himself, like in really bad comedies. Like he was in this one comedy called Smush the Movie. And it's like, oh my God, it's these two guys that have this YouTube channel and they just kind of appeal to 12-year-olds. And I'm like, why the hell was Stone Cold
You can say
in
fuck.
Okay, all right. Why the fuck was Stone Cold in Smush the Movie? I honestly think at this point he's just like, yeah, sure, I'll do it.
Well, I think there was a period of time, and now I think he's probably off that. You know, because he's got his TV show on TNN, the Challenge. He's got his beer. He's got his podcast.
Wait a second, he has a beer?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's called Broken Skull IPA. I've not had it, but
Of course it is.
yeah, I think it's with Sierra Nevada, right? No, it's
El Segundo Brewing
El Segundo,
Company.
sorry.
Oh my God, I need to order some. That's what I want for Christmas.
All right. Anyone listening to this?
Anyone listening, get me that beer.
Christmas, birthday, Easter.
You know, I was going to joke like we should be drinking Miller Lights while we're doing this just to honor Stone Cold, but I don't know if that's
the thought crossed my mind.
Yeah.
It did.
But after the drinking you guys did last night, maybe.
Yeah,
not.
I have a big family thing after this, so
Oh, well.
I'm going to be drinking a lot of that.
Pre-game.
Now that we know about what Jim's family does together, I think it's time to focus on the main event.
Oh, there it is.
There's a moment of suspense.
Yeah.
So we've been dancing around it, but Rock, Steve Austin, WrestleMania X-Seven, 17, whatever you want to call it. Definitely the biggest match of the Attitude Era.
The biggest card of the Attitude Era, right? The entire card. Like, this is one of the ones that, and I'm a total hypocrite because I did not rewatch the whole show. Right.
But you don't need to because you remember these matches.
Well, I've seen it recently. I've definitely seen it in the last year. And like, I remember I've actually fast forwarded on the network to the match before it, which was Triple H Undertaker. And like, even the middle of that match, I kind of like randomly came in like the middle towards the end of that match. And I'm like, holy shit, this crowd is insane. And but up and down the card, I mean, you got McMahon versus McMahon. You've got Benoit and Angle. Right, it was Benoit and Angle, right?
Benoit and
TLC.
You got TLC 2, which I think was probably the best one for my money. That's the one I love the most. You got again Undertaker, Triple H. You've got this match. It's the Attitude Era-eist Attitude Era PPV, but also just really, really good.
Isn't that the same one where they had Raven, Big Show, and who else?
Yes, Kane.
Yeah, Kane. Oh my
Great
God.
match.
Hardcore title, like, and again, a very like, if you needed to put one hardcore title match in a time capsule so aliens could understand what that was, like, that's a great exhibit of it. While not being necessarily a great match, it's a fine match and a very definitive like hardcore title match.
So, Beth, you're young and kind of getting into wrestling. Are you watching this pay-per-view live?
This one live? No. My parents wouldn't let me buy pay-per-views.
Oh, man.
So admittedly, I would always have to like find other ways to watch them. This one in particular, I actually just watched recently.
Yeah. Oh, so you didn't see the
Because now
match?
the internet. So
No, I'm saying you didn't see the match as a kid.
no, not. My parents wouldn't let me. They were like, $30. You're not going to be watching this.
But that's interesting because you talk about that story being sort of something that was kind of getting you into wrestling, but you ended up being able to see the payoff.
Yeah. It was. I always just had to wait until like the Monday after. Or
Again, I can totally relate. It was different era for me. It was like the early 90s where like I would watch the build up, and then I would watch the show at the beginning of Raw or whatever.
Yep.
They would give you the spoilers, but that was, I never got to order the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
It was just,
I was like, my dad
relate.
always gets to order UFCs. Why don't I get to order WWFs? but
That's a strong argument.
I think so.
I think history has shown this particular card that your parents made the wrong decision.
I think so.
It's WrestleMania. I mean,
Yeah, I think my dad he would acquiesce, I think, for WrestleMania and like the Rumble. Those were the two we could usually talk him into.
I feel like this is the tail end for me of watching the pay-per-views regularly, because this is like 18 at this point. It's like kind of right before I graduated from high school and kind of stopped buying pay-per-views unless because I didn't really have access to them in college. So this is maybe one of the last 2 or 3 that I got. I guess I probably watched some of the ones in the summer too, but
I don't think I watched it. I wouldn't have watched it live. This was actually towards the beginning of my not watching period when I was in college. But
because you're so much older than me.
Well, but for me, I think I've told you the story. Like the first day I got to college, we didn't get. I think it was on Spike or TNN. I think at that point,
I think
it wasn't USA Net. Whatever channel it was on, I think it was TNN. We didn't get in my dorm, so that was it. Like I just couldn't get Raw, couldn't watch SmackDown.
It was a joke, actually. Like a year older than me.
No, I know. I'm just, but I would. So this was 2001.
This is 01.
And I definitely remember. By that point, I was in an apartment that did get the US, or it moved back to USA Network or something. Like I was able to watch Raw, but like I had like a hiatus of over a year, so I just like was flipping around, became aware that Rock and Austin were gearing up for this big epic match, and so like I kind of started watching Raw, but I was a poor college student, so ordering a pay-per-view is totally out of the question.
A big deal, yeah.
But my friend Johnny ordered it, taped it, so then whenever the next time I was back home, I watched it on like an SP or an extended play, VHS copy.
Nice.
Also, that's friendship right there.
Yeah.
That is friendship. And also, do they have commercials during pay-per-view? No. They had to have, right? Short ones?
Yeah, like 1 or 2.
That almost
days
seems
they
like the
do.
first
Back
iteration
then,
of DVR where you can fast forward through commercials.
Yeah.
A real friend move.
Yeah. or Triple H matches at that point before you.
Yeah. Also, speaking of the Undertaker Triple H match, can we talk about how the ref was down for like 10 minutes? Why?
So many ref bumps in the early 2000s.
I know. And honestly, the ref in The Rock and Steve Austin's match kind of bugged the hell out of me. He was like just way too up in Steve Austin's grill the whole time. And it was like, okay, this is a no DQ match, right?
Yeah, there's the one, and we're jumping, like, there's the one point where he has the sharpshooter, right? That like the trade, and the Rock gets the rope, and the referee's like, you got to break it up. And it's like, or what?
Why?
Yeah, or what?
I will say that the build of this match is kind of interesting in that it's a relatively straightforward build. It's kind of like Austin wins the Rumble, Rock's got the belt, they have to wrestle each other.
Yeah, and they do this weird thing, and like because they have the Limp Bizkit My Way,
Which is an
video. It's an awesome video.
It's an awesome, like, there's not much story here. There's a weird thing where like Vince makes Deborah, Rock's manager, to piss off
but
Austin.
It has no impact on anything. Like
it was just
so irrelevant.
They just needed to kill 3 weeks of TV, I think, because they're like, we know it's Rock and Austin. We have to have something to talk about for the next couple weeks. But that video of For My Way, which I mean,
it's excellent.
I think for like the best use of a Limp Bizkit song ever.
Well, I was gonna say, and then I think the match before that's Limp Bizkit music era Undertaker, right?
Yes.
So a lot of Fred Durst is making a lot of residual money on WWE Network still because of this one.
Sure. I mean, he's got to have some form of income, right?
Yeah.
Poor Fred Durst.
Income, if not pride.
Right. That was when Limp Bizkit was cool, though. So I guess at the time we were all very accepting.
I think that might have been the thing that killed Limp Bizkit, right? Is when the Undertaker started using his music. That's when we all collectively decided, yeah, this is over.
Mm-hmm. I think I learned Limp Bizkit wasn't cool when in 6th grade I said something about Limp Bizkit in class and everyone was like, what the fuck are you talking about? No one likes Limp Bizkit. I was like, well, you guys don't watch wrestling. So shut up.
Yeah, the
I'm an American badass.
the sales of red Yankees hats went way down after that.
Right. The flat bills.
Yeah.
The flat bill red Yankees hats.
But so which side are you on for this match going into it as a kid?
God.
Are you on the Austin side or the Rock side?
So as a kid, I think this was the point in time where, if I remember correctly, like I think I was on the Rock side, which is funny now because now like Stone Cold is my favorite wrestler of all time. And I rewatch this stuff and I'm like, God damn, I love Stone Cold. Like I just love him so much as a wrestler, as a performer, and his promos, everything. But at the time, I think I was always like on the good guy side. So whenever I saw the promos where Steve Austin was like, all right, well, you better get ready because I'm going to kick your ass. I was like, oh, he's a bully. Yeah. And I was kind of on the Rock side. And the Rock was also like starting to become
meek Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, right. Poor meek Dwayne. But he was also like turning face at this point because whenever they first started rivaling, I mean, he got a lot of boos. He was really more of a heel than anything, and Stone Cold was like every man's wrestler.
See, I was the opposite. Like when The Rock was an overt heel, I was 100% behind him, even over Austin. Mm-hmm. But in this is a face-face matchup. Certainly on paper, entering into the match, like these are both good guys. They're not trying to make one of them the bad guy. They're trying to make it. This is just it's about being the best, and they're the best.
Sure.
And with that, I definitely defaulted to Austin's side with that, because I never really. As much as you can't not like The Rock no matter what he does, I always way preferred The Rock being a bad guy, even when he clearly wasn't actually a bad guy.
Right. I so prefer heel Rock. He just has such a great, like, cocky attitude. I love when he's just...
Like, even when he was wrestling Cena and stuff like that, where he wasn't an overt heel, but he was doing, he was making fun of him a lot, and he was doing kind of very heelish things, and it kind of made you love him.
Mm-hmm. But he's good at that, and Cena kind of deserves it.
Yeah.
Always. I think I was on the Rock side too, mostly just because I was not a huge Austin guy, as a kid, just because, again, being on the, and I've talked about this before, but like him being on the other side of Bret Hart. And I think at that point I was, I was pretty into The Rock, and I think he was probably my guy. Although I don't think it was a strong thing. I think I was just like, this is probably going to be awesome kind of thing match. I wasn't.
Yeah, well, I loved the shit out of both of them, so this was definitely like, and I think that the crowd in this match is kind of on that page, right? That there's definitely some switching and some booing at different points, but for the most part, like during the intros and everything, they're just super happy to be there and that this match is happening.
Whenever I was watching the match again a couple days ago, everyone in that crowd I was so jealous of that they were present for that, especially when they come over the barricade and they're just like brawling in the middle of all these people and security's barely holding them back. I was like, man, what I wouldn't give to be right there at that moment.
It's a weird feeling though, because I've been in crowds like close to a brawl, and there's that combination of like, this is so awesome, and then like, this is really weird. I hope. But to be fair, I will be clear. This was Balls Mahoney and Axl Rotten, so much greater chance of something going wrong in that context than a WWF show in 2001, where there's like kind of perfect security, as opposed to like, I don't know, maybe that cheese grater is going to fly out of Balls' hand and hit me in the arm.
Right. And then Paul Heyman would just be like, that's between you and Balls to figure out what he owes you.
The only match I got to be ringside for, I bought tickets to wrestling. I would save up my money as a kid and buy tickets to wrestling. And one time I could afford ringside because it wasn't a televised event. So I bought ringside tickets, and the only it was like Chris Masters versus Eugene that came over the barricade, and I was just like, well, like
this is what it is.
This is what I get to see. Cool. I mean, hey, it was still fun. I got to see Shawn Michaels wrestle, which was really cool. But
I've never seen Shawn Michaels ringside, so you got that on me.
Cool. He touched my hand. It was pretty amazing.
And you haven't washed it since.
I've never washed it since. Could never wash off the Heartbreak Kid.
No. Even with soap and scrubbing, it just won't come off.
Never.
Yet the 90s were a challenging time for him.
Absolutely.
Dark times.
That's actually a good point. The crowd, though, going into the crowd, because I think the match kind of very quickly gets to that. Again, I think it's in all of their matches where there's not a lot of like holds or even any sort of like kind of lockups. It's just like, all right, we're going to throw a few punches, and then we're going to go to the outside and really kick this off.
And that's that main event of the Attitude Era style. It's a lot of brawling, and this is a long match, and it's a lot
close
of
to like
brawling.
a half hour.
Yeah,
it's a lot of brawling, but it's great, and it also reflects that whole thing. Like Austin's very somber during the introductions, even during some of the My Way video stuff. There again, it's the simple build up. It's about the title, and it's kind of unspoken. It's about being the best ever, right? Because they didn't need to go right out and say it, because everyone knew that. I would argue the world title has never meant more than it did going into this match, where you have the two best of all time, and they both want that damn title.
Right. And that's a lot of the story, that Austin is desperate to get the belt back, feels like he needs it. And that's something that, again, I think sometimes nowadays, not to get into complaint there, but like it kind of lacks, right? That's just that story of like, I need to be the champion. I'm nothing if I'm not the champion.
Right. And I think Steve Austin literally says that in the build
He
up to
does,
this.
yeah. There's an interview he does with the JR interviews The Rock and Steve Austin together, and he says that he's like, I need to be the champion, and the bottom line is that we're gonna go into that ring, and I'm gonna walk out the champion. Yeah. And he says like, it's nothing against you, Rock. He's like, personally, I think you're garbage, but I just really want to be the champion.
Well, and you see like stuff like that, and it sounds like you were picking up on it even when you were watching the TV back in 2001. There was a lot of really subtle, and that's one of the ongoing stories of this match, including the build-up, is these subtle, overt heel things that Austin's doing in the build-up and in the match before, obviously it's going somewhere.
Right.
And by the way, what's up with his music in this one?
Well, that's why he's going to the new music.
Yeah.
Which I think was, again, well, we'll talk about the end,
it
but
so much.
Could not stand it.
It has the normal glass break, and I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, what the fuck is
I
this?
know, right? There's like this metal singer.
Yeah.
I can't.
something about living inside you.
I don't know. I just hated
If
it.
it was going to be like a quote unquote real song, it should just be some like horrible country song that I would never, because that's at least what Stone Cold is, definitely just drinking PBRs and listening to country music.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So I think it's important to the story that it's Austin that gets kind of the first real shot coming along with that that Rock blades off. He gets hit by the ring bell, but that Rock, even kind of 5 minutes into the match, is starting to get some color already.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gives him color. Again, he gives him color. He's the one going. He initiates the brawling right after the bell, which. Is this not one of the most attitude-iest era thing that just immediately before the match, the ring announcer says, "Oh, by the way, it's a no DQ." That's so out there, just random stipulations. It was for the best. Like I would have just assumed. I feel like back in those days, you just kind of assumed every title match was no DQ.
Yeah.
Like every
basically.
ECW match was also no DQ.
Yeah.
But Austin also takes off the turnbuckle cover. He hits the Rock with the bell, which again, it's no DQ, but it's still kind of like doing these things that are traditionally heelish things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting though they get into a sort of an interesting part of the match where they get back to the ring and they start using kind of different moves. They both are at this point are using the sharpshooter. And there's kind of a fun, almost a callback to the big match, obviously, where Austin wrestles Bret Hart, where Rock has him in the sharpshooter, and it does like Austin is bleeding by this point too, and he has those moments where he's like reaching out. And of course, the classic thing is him passing out, but this time he's able to get to the ropes. Although it's also Rock sharpshooter was never very good. You could also just kind of like you could push it.
It's weird. That it's like Austin's sharpshooter is definitely better than the Rock's, even though the Rock uses it on a quasi regular basis.
Yeah.
But that was one of the interesting like recurring themes of this match and like just interesting motifs is other people's finishers, right? Where obviously they both use the sharpshooter, which will always be Bret Hart's, and certainly in 2001, no one's forgotten about Bret Hart yet. And then, of course, later in the match, they both use each other's signature moves. Austin hits rock bottoms, The Rock hits a stunner, and that's just one of those recurring things. It's really nice. Like these guys know each other so well that they can do each other's moveset and do it pretty well. By the way, The Rock's stunner's pretty decent.
Yeah, that's what I loved so much about watching them feud is that you can see that they're getting to know each other in the ring. Because their matches just get more and more fluid. There's so much more high energy, I feel like, because they know how to balance that and really time everything. I remember a distinct moment in one of the first matches I saw with them upon reviewing, and I don't think I noticed it as a kid, but there's a moment where I can see Steve Austin say something to him, like almost kind of helping him out, like, all right, just do this to me now. Because The Rock is still just kind of learning how to do all that. But by the time you get to WrestleMania X-Seven, it's like, they don't have to communicate like that anymore. It's just move after move after move.
And this is definitely the best paced of those matches. Like that, that first one is really kind of clunky, and then even the WrestleMania 15 main event, they're still kind of figuring it out. And this one, it's kind of a weird match structure wise because it's again starts in the brawling and kind of quickly gets into like a very long finishing stretch. But the pacing kind of is relentless and works, and there's never a real lull in it.
Well, and when you get to talk about that finishing stretch, like I took a note here, and I forget what the moment is. But I think it's when Austin first hits The Rock with a rock bottom. That's the first attempted pinfall cover in the entire match. The entire brawling part, the entire the train wreck part, they're both blade. I think The Rock blades twice too, because he has a very kind of meh blade at first. Then Austin does a better blade, but not a WrestleMania 13 level. And then there's one point where Rock's down, and I believe he blades a second time, because then when he comes back, he's down with the ref outside the ring for a while. And when he comes back in, he's juicing quite a bit better. So either that or his lungs, his veins started working better. But yeah, through all of this, no attempted pinfall covers. Because again, it's like, they're not going to waste our time with that bullshit. They both know they're going to have to kill the other guy to get a pinfall cover. And then, so that's like the final third of the match. Until we get to the final third of the match, there's none of that.
Yeah, and there's also, Austin breaking out the $1 Million Dream, which interestingly, they even discuss.
A ringmaster move, yeah.
Yeah, as they call it a move by the ring that he used when he was the ringmaster. Specifically, they call it out, which actually probably a good segue into talking about a little about the commentary, which I actually think was really good.
JR and Paul Heyman.
Was that Paul Heyman?
Yeah, because I think the King was gone
register for me.
The King was gone for a couple months here. I think because there was an issue with the cat or something when he was dating at the time, and he was gone until I think June or July or something. But I think, and I really like Heyman with JR. I think they're a really good combination.
Well, because because JR could kind of almost carry everything by himself.
Yeah.
But Heyman, like, you can tell he would always reinforce the bigger stories. Like, he's the one talking about, like, Austin has to win this one. He's the one who starts talking about, oh, no DQ. Maybe that favors The Rock because he's spent more time as a less than good guy, and he knows how to take advantage. And then JR, and like they worked as a foil where it almost, Heyman seemed like he was more for The Rock and Austin's got to win this and he's done if he doesn't, where JR seemed like he was more for Austin and saying, well, no, this might favor Austin because he's the Texas rattlesnake and he knows how to stop him, and he knows how to do all these things.
I was always on JR's side. I liked listening to JR a lot. He always sided with the good guy and everything too. He always sided with the baby face.
Yeah, and JR does most of the talking, right? And it
He's
works because he's the best ever, right? So, but when Heyman does speak, it really strengthens the story being told in the ring.
Yeah, I think Heyman is one of JR's best partners. They actually worked together a little bit in WCW in the early 90s too. And those are, announcing wise, my favorite WCW shows. I can watch a random B-show WCW match where it's the two of them on it. It's super entertaining. And I just think King, obviously King is his kind of the classic of partners, and they did so much together. But he and Heyman, I think, really work well together, and certainly up there with the King, even if they didn't have the longevity.
Well, and you got to say that if you watch some of those Attitude Era stuff, the King's commentary doesn't necessarily age very well, right? Particularly when we start talking about the not quite wholesome PG stuff.
Yeah.
With he's puppies. Like, it's just like, oh my God. Like, it's almost you want to mute it now. Like, I remember at the time not having a huge problem with it, but I was also 16 or whatever.
Right. He was definitely more of I feel like just kind of the hype man to JR's commentary.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and he's like, wow, I can't believe it, JR. Or he would just like comment on the divas. Like, I'd rather see the divas out here. Like, it was just always like, what are you talking about, JR?
Yeah.
Shut up. Not JR, I'm sorry, King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess we can talk about the way the match kind of gets to an ending, right? Because they start trading finishers. And again, it's unclear of how they're going to get out of this, what's going to end up actually do it.
And by the way, and during this, like, the crowd, who seemed very 50-50, definitely are more and more favoring Austin throughout the match, where there's a couple of those big comeback lariats after Austin been in control for a while that the crowd was overtly booing. Like, there's definitely a good part of the crowd cheering, but the overwhelming part of the crowd is really just booing The Rock, and they're really on Austin's side, mixed, but definitely more on Austin's side, even though he, again, keeps doing overtly heelish things. Like, he does the thing with the double birds over a prone Rock, where it's like, yeah, of course, Stone Cold gives the double birds. That's one of the things he does. But usually he does it to someone in a position where he's not respecting them, where it's like, well, how can he not respect The Rock in the middle of the main event, taking him to the limits he's doing? It feels very heelish to me, but the crowd, they're still behind Steve all the way through into the finishing sequence.
Well, it's one of those things, like, he's gained so much of the fans' love. It really doesn't matter. Like, it's also the same phenomenon you see with heels that are just so hateable that people start to love them.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you still want to watch them. So I feel like Stone Cold had gained that sort of popularity popularity and rapport with the crowd is like, no matter what he does, people just want to see him.
Yeah.
And it's like part of his charm that he's just like, fuck you. It's part of Stone Cold.
Yeah, I think that's one of the struggles that makes the finish a little bit less effective. So what ends up happening here is that Vince McMahon comes down, still dressed from his wrestling match
Against his son.
which I noticed. I noted that just because if you watch WrestleMania 15 match, he comes out at the very begining intending to be the referee, and Shawn Michaels tells him not to. And then when he comes out to run into that match, he's already gone to the suit. And it's like, come on, Vince, you didn't have time to go to the suit for this big moment here. You're going to come out in the cut off sweatshirt like he's a bootleg Bill Belichick or something, or but yeah, and he starts overtly helping Steve Austin, like significantly for about a 5-minute period.
Yeah. I mean, well, and you can tell the crowd kind of slowly starts getting with the picture because first he comes out, it's like, oh, what's he gonna do? Then like The Rock chases him, I think, and then that gets into the Austin giving him the a rock bottom and another spine buster and trying to cover, and then it's once he gets the chair. And then it's just like, well, what's going to happen? It looks like Austin's actually holding up The Rock. It looks like they're together. Like, but you still kind of think, especially if you're watching it live or you're watching it the first time, you still kind of think like, oh, Stone Cold probably like lied to Vince and he's going to get him to help, but Vince is still going to be eating a stunner at the end of this, right?
Yeah.
And then it just slowly becomes more and more like, oh shit, this is bleak. Like this is actually happening.
I was really bummed with that turn.
It's the Empire Strikes Back of the Attitude Era.
Yeah, it's really, and I think that's when that's right before Stone Cold was like all about Vince, right? Like he was briefly like all about that.
Yeah, this is what sets that up, right? That there's that basically 6-month period where he's sort of Vince's lackey and with Triple H too, and it's a kind of a strange time.
Although it does eventually get the what promos and the what chant, which is, again, as tired as that's become, that was so awesome and fun for that first
week and a half.
Yeah,
For
me it was just such.
I wasn't watching every week.
It was just such a contradiction for Stone Cold. I mean, his whole come up was like being against the corporation, being against like the status quo, and.
But that's why I think this match is so perfect and dark and grim. Where it went, maybe wasn't the best place that having Steve as a prolonged ally of his big enemy never really made sense and never really felt organic. But the fact that you have Vince overtly helping it, the audience is coming around, there's even chair shots, and Rock still keeps kicking out. And then the crowd starts coming around and they're rooting for The Rock now. They get what's happened. They're rooting for The Rock. And it really feels like, because it didn't end after the first chair shots, it feels like, oh, The Rock's going to come back. He's now going to get the comeuppance, but it never happened.
He gives him a lot of chair shots.
Which
also I found like a
20
weird finish. Yeah, like it's like a series of chair shots, and then he just kind of pins him. It's just kind of I feel like an anticlimax in a lot of ways.
I totally get what you're saying. It is, from that kind of standpoint, it's not that sensational end, but I think it reinforces the story that Austin was going to do whatever it takes to win. He'd make a deal with the devil, and he would get so frustrated. He would just hit him with all these chair shots, and it just it ends on a downer, and it's supposed to end on a downer, and that's a downer ending that if it was something more sensational, you would have literally had fans rooting for Stone Cold hardcore on Raw the next night.
But they cheer Austin after it's his crowd, and so when he wins, he gets a lot of cheers.
That's true, but it's still, if you had any hope of the Austin turn working, and it did work somewhat. It didn't go all the way because, again, people at their core were never going to hate Stone Cold all the way. But the fact that you even got some of the audience overtly booing him and turning against him was because of that downer ending. And I think that's the way it had to end if you were going to be prolonging this Austin with Triple H and Vince as the main faction, the heel faction, the controlling faction. And that's where the story was going for the foreseeable future. I think that's the ending you have to have.
Yeah, and that makes sense when you put it that way. I mean, I guess I'm just an example of someone who that bummer ending worked on. So I was like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, but again, think about Empire Strikes Back, Han Solo's in Carbonite, Luke loses his hand, found out his biggest enemy is his dad. Like, it's all bummer, and it's known as the greatest science fiction movie of all time. And it was all necessary to set up the next installment, right? And again, we know in this case, the next installment didn't really work out for Vince, didn't really work out creatively. But I think this middle chapter, this dark chapter, totally did.
I think that's ultimately it, though, that had this led to something that was really effective, I think you'd look back and say, well, that was kind of weird, but it worked. And it just ended up kind of fizzling out. Because again, people didn't really want to cheer, boo Austin. And I also just think they just didn't have a lot of places to go. Like the next month, the main event is Triple H and Austin against Undertaker and Kane. And it's like, really? This is what we got? And they try the invasion stuff, which ends up being pretty weird.
It's funny that even in 2001, you knew that creatively the company's in trouble when Kane's in the main event. Yeah. You like him on the card, but when he's in the main event, even in 2001, you got a problem.
And I think there's a reason why this is considered sort of the death of the Attitude Era. And you can sort of, I do think you can sort of see it dying in that moment of just like the story. What propelled the Attitude Era was Austin, and the idea that you're trying to turn Austin and turn him into anything different than the conquering hero means it has to be something different now. We have to be entering some sort of different era.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, too, this is kind of the last time The Rock was fully there, right? And it really, pretty quickly after this, he becomes a much bigger Hollywood guy.
He gets written off TV literally the next night in a cage match with Austin.
Yeah.
To I think to send him off. I think that's The Mummy Returns.
I think that's Scorpion King.
It might be Scorpion King.
I think that's Scorpion.
Yeah.
Because then by X8 against Hogan, he's already like it's Hollywood Hogan against Hollywood Rock, right? Like Scorpion King. I think has already come out, so I think it has to be Scorpion King.
Yeah. Because he doesn't come back at this point. Rock leaves and then doesn't really come back until SummerSlam.
Yeah,
when the invasion angle is already sort of underway and doing what it would do.
So you guys want to hear some very meta thing that I probably constructed in my head and wasn't intentional? Okay. So the song of the show and the match, really the show, is again "My Way" by Limp Bizkit.
Not a Frank Sinatra cover, an original song by Limp Bizkit.
Well, not
it's
very
My
original.
Way, My Way or the Highway. Anyway.
Yeah, but they set it up during the package in the beginning that it's like My Way is The Rock versus Austin. They're both thinking this is my way. We're going to do it my way. And that's where the conflict was, right? That they both needed control. And then they play it again at the end after Vince and Steve embrace. And again, it's the biggest downer of all is that they drink the beers over The Rock. And it's just such a bummer. And then they start playing that again and they focus on Vince. And you realize the My Way in the song as the official song of the year is actually referencing Vince. It's all about Vince's way, his prerogative. It's this whole meta commentary that he controls everything. Even the two biggest superstars in the world in the history of wrestling need to go his way.
Damn. That was very meta.
Yeah.
But very awesome.
Yeah, and I do think that it's not 100% me reading into it because they do, again, start playing the song and focus on him. So...
You know, I was watching, have you guys watched What Culture Wrestling on YouTube?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's really fun to watch. But they just do a bunch of little short stories on wrestling. And they were talking about WrestleMania X-Seven. And it was like 10 facts about it. And the number one was Stone Cold actually considered going against the plan at the end of that match. He considered just giving Vince McMahon a Stone Cold stunner. But he wound up not doing
shooting
it.
right in the ring.
Yeah. He considered just doing it because he wasn't sure if he really wanted to go forward with that.
But I thought it was his idea to go heel. I thought he was...
It might have been initially, but yeah, he might have been... I think I heard that he's considered it.
Yeah.
When he was still married to Deborah in real life, so I think, again, he was drinking a lot during that era from what we found out in police reports since, so he might have just not remembered what he agreed to.
Yeah, maybe he didn't.
And he lost a lot of blood, too.
Yeah. Oh my God. His face was so bloody. It was like you could not even see
but that's the thing is that after WrestleMania 13, where he gave arguably the most grisly blade job ever, it's like everything after that on Austin, you're just like, it's like a 70%.
Right.
Even though for anyone else, that'd be like the most gruesome hatchet job to their own forehead.
Right.
Yeah. Quite a coda. And we'll go to the coda for this podcast in the wrap-up.
Coda Rhodes.
So we always like to play a game in the wrap-up, and this time we are going to play one of our favorites, WWE Mad Libs.
Woo! I am so excited for this.
So this one is entitled Interview with a Superstar.
Ooh,
Okay.
So questions for you guys. I'll ask you guys for some words here. You can go back and forth, whatever strikes. An adjective.
Yeah, Beth, you lead us off here.
Oh my goodness. Grizzly.
Grizzly. A person in the room.
Chris Miliaccio.
Was he in the last one? I think I read the last math. Just always make it Chris.
Always me. That's fine. Plural noun.
you want to just alternate here?
Let's just alternate. Butts. Yeah.
Butts. Okay.
I'm 10.
Next one, I hope I can be in seats.
Noun.
Noun, seat.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Again, plural noun.
Hammers. I'm like sticking with wrestling things, except for butts. That was a wild card.
Adjective.
Steel reinforced.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Yeah.
Plural noun.
Wow, you're getting all
I'm
plural
getting all the
nouns.
nouns. Turnbuckles. Should I not be choosing wrestling words?
That's fine.
I don't know whether we should be or we should not be.
Because I feel like I want it to be zany and fun, and like if I just keep saying wrestling words, it's just gonna be like, this sounds like an interview.
I think it'll work regardless. Based on what I'm seeing here. Noun.
Okay.
Noun, I'm gonna go with taco.
Taco.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Adjective.
Foamy.
Ooh. Verb.
Bleeding. Wait, or bleeding.
Bleeding, bleeding's a verb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I drank a lot at the Ring of Honor show last night.
One more plural noun.
Glasses. Is that plural?
I think so.
That's plural. Glasses.
You say drinking
You
glasses.
say glasses.
Right?
Okay,
Doesn't
yeah,
need to be
great.
eyeglasses.
Great.
So this is an interview between a reporter and WWE's newest and most grisly superstar, Chris. Reporter, in the last year, you've become famous to butts all over the world. What's it been like for you? Well, it's been a seat come true. I watched the WWE on television as a kid. Now I'm one of WWE's biggest super hammers. What's the best part about working for the steel reinforced WWE? I get to work with the absolute best turnbuckles in the business.
That's what he's pumped about.
That one worked out really
that
nicely.
did work,
yeah.
What more could a taco ask for? Do you have any advice for foamy up-and-comers? Yes. Never give up, never give in, and never say bleeding. Kids, aim for the glasses.
Got to.
Nice.
Yeah, that was
a good time.
That one did work.
I mean, and they do have, everyone knows WWE has by far the best turnbuckles, right?
They
do.
do have the best turnbuckles.
The mat doesn't have a lot of give, a little hard, but those turnbuckles, like little clouds of heaven.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be your, maybe Grizzly Beth could be
That's
your
my
wrestling name if you
well,
want.
my wrestling name is so far Belle of the Brawl. I'm pretty proud of that one.
I think that's strong.
And I think it's okay. See, my wrestling hero is Stone Cold. So I imagine that I'm just kind of like the juxtaposition of a Belle of the Brawl, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you imagine Southern Belle, but here I come, big old lesbian, coming out to the ring, drinking beers, wearing flannels or something. I don't know.
I like it. I could definitely see that
Yeah.
getting some heat.
My rival would be Bailey because she's like so happy and she's like, I'm a hugger and stuff. I'd be like, no, bitch.
Maybe you
Although-
turn Bailey.
well, I was about to say-
People would be like, they turn on Bailey. 'Cause
Yeah, maybe.
I think you'd be a face within like 3 weeks, though. I think that they would be a very organic.
I'd want to be a
support.
heel so bad.
Yeah, but again, you could just be like The Rock, right? Just
Yeah,
you're
true.
playing heel, and you're just
True.
It's 2018.
I mean,
you know?
even the
There's-
way I just said, I want to be a heel, probably tells you I'm a baby face.
you
yeah.
need to tap into something. Because you talk about you do want to do some training. So maybe in the
I
future,
do, yeah.
we will get to come out and see you.
Yeah, maybe one day, hopefully by March, I'll be in a training gym. But like, my God, doing these wrestler workouts is like, it's no joke. There's so much
Oh
cardio.
yeah. I would never try to do that.
God damn. I mean, it's, I was telling Chris earlier, like I did personal conditioning in college and for a hot minute, I thought that's what I wanted to do. But I don't know. And at the time I was living in Tennessee and they don't make a lot of money in Tennessee. So I was like,
Right.
I better switch. But it's tough getting back into it. I mean, I've never been a strong cardio person and that's like 80% of the wrestler's workout is like, you have to be good at cardio and you have to be good at like quick, brief, like power lifts, you know?
Yeah.
That's what they do. And at this point, the athleticism is so much more valued than the, I mean, like, I don't think a wrestler like Stone Cold would still be able to, like, exist in the capacity that he did because he was so much brawler and there wasn't a lot of high flying, there wasn't a lot of jumps. I feel like the wrestlers that stand out today are, like, super athletic and There's a lot of lifts. There's jumping. There's high flying.
Well, on the plus side, though, you don't need to train how to cut yourself like you would have had to
True.
15 years ago. So your
True.
forehead can stay intact.
God, that would have freaked me out. I do not like that.
Yeah.
I also feel like I would like screw it up somehow and like, oh, I cut my eye. Like, the adrenaline would be pumping so much, I'd like fuck it up.
Well, we hope to have you on when you're main eventing WrestleMania. We'll hopefully.
I'll settle for House of Hardcore. As soon as you make the House of Hardcore,
Okay.
we will do a live podcast from there.
Hey, I'm down. I'm just gotta get there.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to plug for now?
Something to plug. I'm on a sketch comedy team. Is that something appropriate to plug?
I think that's totally appropriate.
Yeah, I mean,
to plug,
if you're doing
particularly
shows,
when
We're on the same
Beth
team.
and I are in the same sketch comedy team. Victory Serial.
Yes.
You can see us many Tuesday nights at the People's Improv Theater for free.
For free. So
For
really,
how much? How many dollars?
$3.99.
$0.
Wow.
No dollars.
So
at
really,
all.
there's no excuse why you shouldn't. And I don't mean I'm probably biased, but I think we're pretty funny.
Thanks, Obama. You got me free comedy. I hope Trump doesn't ruin it.
Ooh, Trump's America. You
He's
never
going to
know.
take away our free comedy. No, they won't.
He can take our health care, but he can't take our comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Which you're going to need when you cut your eyeball, though. Without anyone even telling you to do it.
Just damn.
I'm going to go out and go into business for yourself in the ring.
With any luck, by the time this podcast is out, we'll be doing a sketch about wrestling that Beth wrote.
I did. I wrote a sketch about wrestling. I need to revise it one more time. It needs a third beat, but I'm pretty proud of it. It's really just like a wrestler impersonation sketch. It's just an excuse for us to be like, I wrote you as Randy Savage, Chris.
I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I wrote myself as Stone Cold.
Chris was raving about it last night.
Oh,
You saw
really?
how excited he was, yeah.
Oh my God, I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wrote myself as Stone Cold, and I didn't write myself any lines. I just wanted to come in and give myself a beer shower and stunner someone. That was it.
That's
the only thing I
pretty
want to
much
do in that sketch.
all I want to do every day when I wake up in the morning. I'm like, is today the day? But you're going to have that day coming soon, so I'm jealous.
Someday soon.
Yeah.
So kids, if you're out there and you want to be able to live that dream, but you don't want to do the workouts, just start
Just do
doing sketch comedy
comedy
classes.
Yeah. There is going to be a show that starts regularly at the People's Improv Theater that is like a wrestling show. Like they're not professional wrestlers. I think a couple of them are. Like they train. But it's just comedians that do these like wrestlers narratives and then they do matches together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could
Probably
be in the near
quite a few of
future.
our guests, I would imagine, are going to be involved in that.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure Langston will probably get involved somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that to happen. And I like very fangirled introduced myself to the people who run it, and I was like, I love wrestling. Please talk to me.
Let me do a beer shower.
I'll do it, I swear. I'll just interfere with a match. They won't even expect me.
Improv.
Improv. It's fine.
Sure.
It's fine.
It's not improv, it's sports entertainment.
Improv sports entertainment.
Well, thank you for joining us. And until next, I think it's been super fun.
Yeah.
Until next time, I'm Chris.
I'm Fax.
We're the Curtain Jerks. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you around, probably at a Ring of Honor.
Thanks, guys.
Attention Springwood, my name is Josh Krebs.
And I'm Liz Richards.
And we're the hosts of Bloody Date Night.
So Josh and I have been dating for 4 years, and Josh loves horror movies, and I hate them.
Yeah, so each episode we go through the horror movie franchise canon to watch an episode and then meet up and we discuss it together. And so far it's been going pretty well, right Liz?
I think it's gone pretty well so far.
Yeah, each episode I try to see how far I can push Liz to watch a really good horror movie until she basically leaves me, and it hasn't worked yet.
Not yet.
And it's awesome because you're the Tatum to my Sydney.
You're sweet.
And here's a clip from one of our recent episodes.
Hello, I'm Exposition.
Hey, let me tell you what just happened. There's a break-in at this costume store. Somebody stole some ropes, some knives, somebody stole a mask, they stole $250, they scared a cat,
They took two boas.
they took two boas.
Two feather boas, one set of angel wings.
It's one of those goddamn... They're probably having a burlesque... probably doing a burlesque show later. I don't know. Haddonfield. What isn't happening? Haddonfield's first burlesque.
Burlesque Club.
That'd be amazing. I would love that.
The Lacy Pumpkin.
Ooh.
This has been an Atlantic Transmission production.